Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where I believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we believe that engaging in creativity in fun ways allows you to create magic in your life. This week's podcast is a little bit of a spinoff on last week's podcast, which was all about the invisible force behind achieving your goals. And now we're going to be walking into another part of achieving our goals, right? And this is kind of in the element of more of creating our life, the ways that we're stepping forward and creating our life. And that is the content that I wanted to bring you for the new year. And so it just continues. And honestly, this is the content that just like flows to me. I get so excited to share with you and to teach you things that I've learned. And it's literally so much fun. Without further ado, let's jump into this podcast. Last week, we talked about the invisible force behind achieving our goals and sort of this magic formula, right, for being able to bring forward whatever it is that we want in our life. And what's really interesting is that even after you know the equation and you know it's so simple, the question remains, why don't we do it more? Right? And a couple of things that might come up for you when you immediately say, well, time, A, hello, we're very busy. And B, it might be our ability, right? Like our ability to see the great possibilities for our life, our ability to be creative or to envision that life could be different, right? That takes a certain amount of belief or hope, correct? So there might be other things for what you think might get in the way of why we don't do it. Today, we're simply just going to talk about time and our ability. Recently, I have been feeling that it is very important to protect our private time, the time that we have with ourselves. And for some of you, depending on ages of kids that you might be raising or just there's so many factors in life and everybody's life looks different. But sometimes your private time literally looks like the time that the bathroom door is closed, that you are occupying that space. But the point is just really being able to pinpoint what it is that we are doing in our private time. And then what can I do to protect that time? And part of the goal in protecting that private time is allowing us to use that time to elevate our vibration in a way that will be in conjunction with what it is that we're trying to bring forward in our life, like what we talked about on our episode last week. But another element is like, what is it that we actually are doing with that time? Because there is the slight suggestion that you can just put on an intentional song while you're showering, and that will affect your day differently. Or maybe while you're driving, you use that time wisely, to have an uplifting conversation with the person you're driving with, or to listen to something that is really benefiting you. But we can also use that time to do the meditation, to do the visualization, to feel the feelings of what it is that we're trying to bring forward. What we often kind of get stuck in is, that's great, but I can't even envision the very best life for myself. You know how sometimes it's blocked from your view until you step into higher ground? And maybe it's really just about stepping into higher ground consistently and allowing that view to be augmented and changed as you see that more is possible for your life. But I am going to talk to you a little bit more about the ability to be creative for your life and to be able to see more than you could have otherwise seen. Before we move into that topic, I do want to tell you about something that I learned about time. According to researchers, most people have more time than quote, people used to have. We have more time, but it is fragmented time. So it's in 5 to 15 minute increments. And what we normally do with those 5 to 15 minute increments of our time is what the world around us is training us to do. We're so addicted to that little tap on our phone that our thumb knows right where it's at. Have you ever tried to move your favorite app to a different page of your phone screen, or just anywhere different that your thumb would have to click somewhere different? It actually makes me laugh every time I've ever done that, because I go to click on it and it's not there. And then it brings awareness, like how much I am, clicking on that app, or, how I am spending that time. If we can train ourselves to learn to use that time with purpose, then those little increments of time can propel you forward. One of the things I recently did was to create a different wallpaper on my phone. And eventually I know I'll get used to it, but right now it's new to me. And it's this morning checklist of things that I want to say, to think, to feel, to do. And we have access to these things. We have access to create a little difference in our normal routine, whether it's a wallpaper screensaver on your phone, or maybe a little alarm reminder that you set on your phone to like ding. These phones really are advantageous if we use them well. And I wanted just to drop in those 2 little bits about time, because I think it's imperative that we ponder how we're using our private time and protecting that so that it helps us, so that it allows us to step into the abilities that we have that are not hard and they don't take a lot of time. It's just protecting that time and not squandering it away. Plus, it just feels really empowering to me to know if I use those 5 to 15 minutes that I have, man, like just a little differently, everything looks different. The surface of my life looks different because of the way that I can use those little increments just a little bit more wisely. And so another side of what kind of gets in the way of the equation being so simple, but why don't we do it more, is really just as we get older, we sort of, I'm going to say this, we lose our creativity, but we don't really lose it. We just bury it. Okay. So as a kid, do you remember how easy it was to be like, let's play this game. Let's do that. Like you had a friend over and it was like, you didn't even have to like sit and ponder what should we do, right? Maybe coming into like your really young, like teen years, you started to go into that direction. Like, what should we do? And you started to be aware of like, maybe they want to do this or that. But when you're young, when you are in like, let's just call it under 10, you're like, let's play house. Oh my word. Maybe you play house for a little while and then you move on and you say, let's play this other game. Let's sing a song. Let's do a dance. And you're just a never ending flow of creativity moving through what you want to do from one moment to the next. And it's actually astounding. And that still is in you. That part of you still lives. It just gets a little buried by the practicality of life, the seriousness of life. And quite frankly, often we get very run down and we start living life from, that empty tank that we're always looking for something to recharge us to get us to the next thing. Not to mention the habits and the patterns that neurochemically are developed inside of our body. Like that's a whole nother conversation. But in this conversation, what we want to talk about is how do we uncover that in very simple ways that don't take a lot of time, that we can do in those little increments that will bring us into a completely different way to live. Pam Grout in her TED Talk reminds us that creativity isn't reserved for the artsy people. Every single one of us is creative, but many adults have forgotten this truth. Remember how we used to create wild adventures or build imaginary worlds as kids? That spark never left us. It just got buried under the noise of adulthood, right? So we see this topic being reiterated. It's really still in us. It's really still a part of us. And if you don't know Pam Grout, she is fantastic. Some of her books that I have loved the most are E Squared and E Cubed. And she continually moves through all these different ways for you to think about life, all these different ways for you to invite creativity in manifesting, in creating your life. And it really lets you take a step back and try some of her experiments. And it's so fun to see what comes forward. I remember being completely astounded when I was at a retreat and I was reading Pam Grout's book. And I cannot remember what the experiment it was, okay? But it had something to do with manifesting a key. Because at the time, I had this impression. It felt like I had the key to help other people unlock their heart. And part of the experiment was looking for just a confirmation of that. And this woman, like on the last day, who I had gotten to know, not super well, but just well. She woke up that morning. She was in the shower and she had instruction that the key necklace that she felt prompted to bring to the retreat, for what reason she didn't know, because she did not plan on wearing it, was supposed to be given to me. So the woman walks up to me the next day, that next morning, and she places this gold key necklace around my neck. And she said, "I'm not sure why, but I know that you're supposed to have this." Crazy, right? It is so fun to play. It is so much fun to be in the space of playing and welcoming playfulness. In Pam Grout's TED Talk, where she's reminding us that creativity is inside of all of us, that most adults have really just forgotten that we were creative. She says that one of the tricks that she does is she writes down new ideas every single day in this really cheap notebook that will surprise and delight her. She does it in a cheap notebook to let go of the need for it to be right, or to look good, or to qualify somehow, right? And she asks you that as you're in the process of doing this, of writing 3 things down every single day, that you kind of act just a little bit ridiculous sometimes. She says, do a crazy dance when you're on your way to the bathroom. That costs you 0 extra time, but it causes your left brain to literally kind of shut down in a way, or she says to get disgusted and leave, right? And it allows your right brain to have more space, have more freedom to play and get creative. When we're not, think about it, when you're not being hovered and watched over by the person who says you should be doing it right, even if that's you, all of a sudden there's something inside of you that unlocks, and you can just be, and you can create, and you can say, that game's next, and next let's dance, and next let's, right? And we tap back in to that creative soul that has always been a part of us. When Pam suggests that we should write 3 things down every single day and be ridiculous in conjunction with it so that it unlocks and allows us to have more freedom in the things that we're writing, she suggests things like write 3 adventures that you would like to take. Like, sit and dream about that. Write 3 ideas of things that you can make from a clothes hanger, or formulate 3 things that you would like to photograph. When we start to think about just creative things, it just starts to unlock our brain. And I like that the examples that she gives us that seem a little bit out there. Like, why do I want to spend time focusing on, what I can do with a clothes hanger? Because the point is to allow your brain to unlock creativity, not that it has to be correct or right. Even if you're dreaming up 3 adventures that you would like to take, they don't have to be the top 3. They just have to be 3 things that seem fun. Just write it. Just write it, because you're unlocking something. You're unlocking your ability to create in life. I remember sitting with my Aunt Noni when I was young, let's call it 13 years old. And I had the assignment to write a paper. And it was a creative writing paper. And we were supposed to tell a story. And I felt a little bit stuck. And so she was trying to like kind of give me some guidance. And she said, well, describe to me what you're going to write about. And I said, well, I'm going to write about the time that I was at the beach and da da da. And she's like, okay, tell me what you have so far. And it's simple things like my family went to the beach. Just really, really, really simple, like reporting the story to you. And she said, how did the sand feel between your toes? And how did the sky look? And how did the air feel? And she guided me through starting my paper in describing those things. How warm and soft and squishy that felt between my toes. And how it felt like I could breathe in forever because the air felt so amazing and clean. And how I felt so small in front of this incredibly great big ocean. And then the rest of the paper, she didn't need to guide me anymore. I got it. And that's kind of how our brains work. Our brains, if we just show them a pattern of creativity and we remind our brain to think outside of the box. Like, this is what my week looks like. This is all the work I need to do. This is where I need to show up for my kid. This is where I need to show up for my family. This is what all the commitments and et cetera, so forth. And I forgot to dream about that vacation that I want to create, that I might not even have the resources entirely for, but if I don't put forth the vision, how is it going to happen? Mary Oliver is a famous poet, and she asks this famous question. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What an incredible question to remind us to take the time to actively create. By the way, Mary Oliver lived from 1935 to 2019, and she often carried a 3x5-inch hand-sewn notebook for recording impressions and phrases. She would describe that she would go for a walk in the woods to kind of ignite her creativity. And a really good walk is one that almost never even happened, because as she began to walk, she would have to stop and just write and write and write. And the most successful walks were the longest with the least amount of walking. To me, it's just about teaching our brains when we are ready with a notebook and we say, whenever the idea flows, we're going to write it down. We're committed to it. Then it just flows more often. And we teach ourselves to be in a different state, in a state of creating our life. One of the things that I like to do, by the way, which I know I've mentioned on here before, is that I text myself. So instead of carrying that notebook, which I used to carry notebooks like that for just ideas and things I needed to remember all the time. I was writing stuff down. But what I do now is I text myself. So you know how you have like all the important people that you text the most at the top of your text chain or your list? You can have them pinned to the top. Well, I'm one of them. Isn't that fun? So go and pin yourself so that you can text yourself often. And then when you sit down and you're collecting your thoughts and you're at your computer, that's what I do when I'm at my computer and I know, oh, this is a thought that has to do with business. And so I record it in the proper area. Or this is a thought that has to do with, you see what I'm saying? And it just continually says to my brain, I'm open and I'm ready. And when you give me the ideas, I'm going to record it, right? When you give me the ideas, or more so, not necessarily said that like that, but when you are open to the ideas to flow to you, right? From your divine creator. That's literally when you're in flow, you are connected to the source. You're connected and it just flows to you. And all of the more beautiful ideas of the way that your life can be can just come into existence because they first come and land in your mind as an idea of something that you would love to do in life. Albert Einstein said, creativity is intelligence having fun. The point isn't perfection, it's freedom. When you're in perfection, you know for sure you're not in creativity. Going back to the example of kids having fun, they're definitely not trying to be perfect. Allowing yourself to be ridiculous allows you to let go of that. John Steinbeck said, now that you no longer need to be perfect, you can be good. You can create good. You can see good. You can elevate your living. And you can be doing things within this next year that you never would have actually written down at the beginning of the year. This practice opens yourself in a different way, and it just allows the ideas to flow to you, and then we visualize and we bring them forward. Actively creating your life isn't just about having fun, though it is fun. It's about waking up to your ability to shape your world. When you engage your creativity daily, you remind yourself that your life is yours to design. I hope that you can see that you have more power than you think you do when you truly embody the idea that you are the artist of your own life. I hope this podcast ignites in you a desire to be in the field of play, playing in the ability that you have to create and to create it in ways that maybe you didn't see possible before. So many times reason gets in our way and we say, we can't do that because XYZ. And anytime you're in that, you know that you're not in the flow. So I hope that this podcast unlocks that just a little bit for you today. And before we go, make sure that you are subscribed to the Mindset Check podcast so that you don't miss future episodes. Also, if you're loving this podcast, it is such a great help to us if you will take just a couple minutes of your time and leave us a review. So you can click the amount of stars that you think the podcast deserves, and then you can just write one sentence or however many sentences you would like. But the point is just the review counts if you just say, this is a great podcast. We would love to hear from the way that it truly, really is affecting your life. And I always love sharing those with our listeners as well. So we would love to hear from you. And before we go, I want to share with you a quote from John Cleese. He said, if you want creative workers, give them enough time to play. I hope that you take a moment to really let that quote sink in, because anyone who is taxed and at their max cannot truly be creative, right? There's too much pressure, and that goes for you or the way that you're setting up your environment for your family or whatever it is that you have your hand in, where you can bring more play and more creativity into a scene. That actually is what helps us to be more effective in our life. And again, like we talked about in the podcast, to have more drive and desire to create a very fun life. Until next time, my friend.